welcome to Half Hour With. My name is Daniel D'Addario, and I am the chief correspondent at Variety. I'm very lucky to be here today with Sam Levinson, who is the writer, director, and executive producer of Euphoria. The third season of Euphoria, which recently concluded, outdid its two predecessors in intensity and was a wild ride from beginning to heartbreaking end. Sam Levinson, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
In your own words, could you give us an overview of what the third season of Euphoria is about?
I think it's about a group of friends who are now young adults trying to deal with, I think, the burdens of freedom in the wild west of adulthood. There's a host of new businesses that have sort of, popped up post the pandemic where it's, influencing OnlyFans. There's drug dealing, and they're trying to kind of navigate their respective worlds and maintain a sense of self or kind of lose themselves to the lawlessness of the modern day.
For those who haven't seen Euphoria's third season, here is the trailer.
Have you ever been to Mexico?
Me? In Mexico?
Swallow. Disfruta.
Is it nice?
Some parts.
In the beginning, we had to make a choice about who we were and what we wanted.
The network loved your storyline.
Really? But what we didn't realize was how far we were willing to go.
I have a meeting.
With who? Cassie? Round two, baby?
I want to tell you something that might make you angry. Maddie's been helping me.
My Maddie?
She was my best friend.
What do you think she wants?
Poke the ass up.
After all these years,
Does your wife know you do this?
Do your parents know what you do?
I'm your sugar daddy now. Have we finally gone too far?
I used to be your husband's friend. I'm gonna become his worst fucking nightmare.
I've done a lot of evil and I've never really thought about it.
Okay, well, it's clear you've been using a gun.
You wanna undo the evil you've done? Start by changing yourself.
I'm trying.
Look at me. I can see it that you're a good kid in a bad situation. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, fuck.
I used to believe that the world could be a better place if people could empathize.
Remember me?
How could I forget?
The real disease is that people no longer know the difference between right and wrong. You poison kids for money.
Mom, I really need to come home.
You're evil.
What happened to you?
Almo tried to kill me. He's gonna do the same to you.
I'm trying to do a good thing!
What is wrong with you people? In the end, no matter who you are or what you want, we all answer to God.
I want to talk a little bit about this season bringing religious faith and revenge to the fore as themes. In the first two seasons, for those who may not be aware, Euphoria was about students in high school. Now they're all grown and they're dealing with even bigger concerns than they had before, including the search for God or truth in the universe. Could you get into why that compelled you as an idea for the season?
Um, I think in all honesty, the break between season two and season three helped crystallize at least what story I wanted to tell. You know, prior, but I think prior to finishing season two, I had a pretty good idea of where I wanted season three to go. I started writing it. There was the writer's strike. I had to put my pen down. And then, uh, we lost Angus Cloud to a fentanyl overdose in the summer. And I think, in just kind of grappling with the grief of that, but also the sort of larger fentanyl issue that our country was going through gave, I don't know, kicked up a lot of feelings for me in the sense that we have 75,000 people per year dying of a fentanyl overdose.
Mhm.
Fentanyl is an issue that only America is facing.
Mhm.
If you look at Europe in 2023, 123 people died of a fentanyl overdose.
Mhm.
And so I think, I started going, why is this problem unique to America? Why are we allowing so many young people to have their lives taken away without a second chance? And if I'm going to come back and do a season three, what is it that I want to say? And what matters to me as a human being and as a storyteller? And
Mhm.
I think, I looked at it almost through the lens of AA. The first season was, we're powerless, over drugs and our life has become unmanageable. The second season is came to believe that only a power greater than us can restore us to sanity. And the third season is made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand it. And so I thought if that's the sort of thematic backbone of this season, um, then maybe there's something here that's valuable and worth telling.
I think that viewers of Half Hour With who have not yet seen Euphoria may want to fast forward a bit because I want to talk about stuff that might be considered a spoiler for a little bit. Because everything you're saying resonates with me as a viewer who really loved the character of Rue, as so many of us do, and really rooted for her and really believed that just as you said, she deserved a second or whatever number it was chance to rebuild her life. And in the final episode of the season, her life is taken from her because she is dosed with fentanyl. And I think that part of what makes that such a painful contrast is that over the course of this season of television, she seems to really be turning a corner. She has a plan and she has this renewed faith. And the line of communication is open with her mother, which is obvious, which has been a trouble spot as well. And I guess I wanted to know if this contrast was intentional and if you struggled with writing this ending for Rue, knowing how much we all love her.
No, I think that was actually the point
Mhm.
more than anything is if I could, if I could take this character that we love and that we're collectively rooting for, and then allow this to happen to them, it puts the audience in the shoes of, I think, parents and family members across the country who lose loved ones to fentanyl. And so it's what gives it its power and its poignancy. And especially since, from season one, the design of the show was always to be inside the head of the addict, to to not just see their actions and the kind of, shitty things that they do, but to know their thinking behind it. So so that we understand that she is at her core a good person. She does want to be better. She wants to have a relationship with her family and her friends, but addiction keeps getting in the way. So we have an enormous amount of empathy for her and are rooting for her. And I think, it felt like it felt like not just the right thing to do, but also the most powerful thing I could do as a storyteller is to is to show what happens, if you're, if you're messing around with drugs these days. It's not like when I was a kid, and I struggled with addiction as a teenager. We didn't have fentanyl uh,
Right.
like it is today.
Right.
And if I was if we did, then I don't think I would be here,
Mhm.
and quite a few of my friends wouldn't either. And so it felt important to me to to show what this drug does. It takes away people we love.
I know that I know that Zendaya has been a beautiful advocate for Rue, the character, and for people who walk down roads that Rue's walked down. I remember her speaking at the Emmys when she won about just that. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the conversations you two had when it became clear that this was the vision you had for Rue's fate, and what it was like watching her play out Rue's final days.
Um, Look, I think it was tough. It was, you know, when I pitched her this season, um, and the ending, I think it was a very emotional um reaction. Uh, we love the character of Rue. She's done such an incredible job bringing this character to life, and she's such a gifted actor. And she's in the hands of a lesser actor. um it wouldn't be as, the character wouldn't be as charming and lovable and humorous. I mean, she's able to kind of hit those notes of humor and also real drama. So I think it was a tough, it was a tough discussion. And I think even through shooting, it was a bit, it sort of weighed on both of us. But I think, at the end of the day, she understood what I was doing. And it also felt like the the right way to honor Angus,
Mhm.
someone who we loved dearly and really rooted for and saw the best in. And I think so when it came time to shoot, the scene in episode 8. I mean, we also had Coleman Domingo there, who's been one of my closest collaborators for
Mhm.
over a decade, and I think a grounding force in Zendaya's life as well. So I think that kind of camaraderie really helped this this sequence, feel authentic and also just, and meaningful. It's, we're all there kind of, and we've been doing this for, 8, 9 years together. So um it just to be honest, it was a beautiful couple of days as we were shooting those scenes, because I think we knew how audiences would respond to it. And
Yeah, I certainly responded. I want to take a moment just to express that when I was watching this season, Angus felt very present to me, and I think that's a tribute both to the actor he is and to the care you took with it. So I just wanted to say I was very sorry for your loss. Um,
thank you.
I have one more question about how the season's end game, and then we can move on to more broad topics. I was curious if you could talk a little bit about the importance of revenge as a concept. Coleman Domingo's character Ali is feels duty bound to be of service, he says, by avenging the loss of Rue.
I mean, look, I think that there's two things that, I'm sort of playing with on a story level, and it's, I think, the reality of addiction today, and then also I don't want to say a sense of wish fulfillment, but the sort of fantastical elements of Euphoria, the slightly heightened elements of it. And so I thought, okay, well, here's a guy who's been in recovery for years, who has poured his heart and soul into, you know, being there for young people, fighting for them, trying to make sure they're clean. The pandemic, I think, was catastrophic for people suffering with addiction. The the amount of overdose deaths skyrocketed. The fact, churches were closed down. Um, there wasn't a place for people to gather. And I think that the mental health toll is something that is hard to calculate. And so I thought, if I can take this character who's consistently been there for these young people, and get him to this breaking point
Mhm.
where he goes, you know what? All of this stuff that I'm doing isn't working. It's not making a difference. How can I be of actual service? And
Mhm.
also, he comes to this conclusion, which I think is a little bit of uh, of of what I think I've experienced over the last 8 years of making the show, which is, at first, I wanted to tell a story, in which we had empathy for an addict. But you start to realize that if you can have empathy for an addict, well, then you could also have empathy for a drug dealer, and they're just doing it to feed their family. But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, there is such thing as right and wrong. And if you're selling poison to kids for money, it's evil. And I think that that kind of motivation kicks something up in Ali, where he wants to uh he wants to deliver justice. And it's and he's sort of lost faith in the system. He's lost faith in um uh he loses faith in God for a period of time. And
Mhm.
it just felt like, here's a guy who was an army ranger back in the day, and and this is what he's going to resort to. He's had it. He's reached his breaking point, and he's going to deliver justice by whatever means necessary.
But now speaking about an element of how society has changed between season two and season three, um, the plot line for the character of Cassie, played by Sydney Sweeney, where she becomes a performer on the user-generated platform OnlyFans. Where we last saw Cassie, she was a high schooler who had a very kind of turbulent, outsized inner life that Sweeney brilliantly acted out in some of the show's most memorable sequences. And now she is kind of acting out fantasies and desires of all these unseen people on the other side of the computer. I guess I'm curious what you thought the OnlyFans element would add for Cassie, and why it seemed like a fit.
I mean, to be honest, it feels sort of like a natural evolution to a character that always, from the very beginning, kind of tied her worth to, or her appearance,
Mhm.
and to being desired by
Mhm.
others. I mean, her kind of core motivation was to be loved and kind of affirmed by mainly the guys around her. And she ends up finding herself in a situation where her husband's in debt. And so I think she uses that as a justification for uh OnlyFans and kind of, this desire to be famous. And it's, I think she starts off kind of as, well, it's just this thing I'm taking, just, kind of erotic but tasteful pinup style photos. But I think as the show goes on, you start to see how those boundaries that you set for yourself in a business like this start to fall, and you begin to sell more and more and more of yourself. I think that's a key theme of this season is the selling of one's soul
Mm.
and the erasure of whatever boundaries you once had, until until it leads to uh, some sort of crisis or moment of, oh wow, how did I get here? So it felt like, it felt like a very modern uh, kind of example of this sort of age old problem of you know selling one's soul.
Well, the mechanism is modern, but I would add it's not really selling one's soul. It's that Cassie, who's always been something of a romantic and a fantasist, can't see herself clearly or can't be honest with herself about what she's doing, just as you say. And I think that's one thing that all the characters on Euphoria, or many of the characters on Euphoria, share is uh, a very relatable and painful to watch inability to be honest with themselves, take an honest
Yeah.
accounting of oneself, as the saying goes.
Yeah, the lies we tell ourselves, to in order to kind of follow our basest desires.
Yeah. With that in mind, I'd like us to watch a clip from season 3 of Euphoria. There's so much to talk about in that clip. One thing that struck me, especially in this season, which correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe was 100% shot on VistaVision, was the
No, it's
remarkable
65 millimeter.
65 millimeter.
Yeah.
The remarkable investment in the visuals. So in that scene, uh, Rue is attempting to get back into the US after crossing the wall to Mexico in her new life as a drug mule, and the car is teetering over the border wall. I'm curious if you could talk about what the remarkable visuals of this season added.
Yeah, I mean, well, a couple things. One, originally she was supposed to be swimming across like the Rio Grande.
Whoa.
And I had written that, but early on we did a scout at the Drug Enforcement Administration offices in Los Angeles. And they have all these photos on the walls of like their best drug busts, so it's like 15 kilos of cocaine and
Right.
$8 million in the trunk of a car. And then I saw this one photo of a Jeep stuck on top of a border wall. And I said, well, what happened? And the DEA guy says, oh, some moron tried to drive a car over the border. And I thought, that's the kind of moronic thing Rue would do. And so
Right.
we ended up recreating it where the car gets stuck and is teetering there. I think our thought for this season was, I think we wanted to kind of reference, or I don't know if it's necessarily reference, but we wanted to evoke kind of the feeling of the myth of American cinema, in the sense that we wanted these kind of images that felt large and spoke to the kind of possibilities of life. So we went back to, John Ford and
Hmm.
Don Siegel and Howard Hawks, and these images that kind of have this sense of possibility, danger, freedom, things that I think that are all sort of in our head and in our mind, about the kind of the that speak to sort of the story of America. So,
Hmm.
we settled on 65 millimeter. We had Kodak make us a brand new film stock for this season, which is, kind of as close as you can get to sort of Technicolor these days. It's a very kind of saturated and punchy, sort of daylight stock. And we decided to basically shoot as much of the show on it as possible. And also, from seasons 1 and 2, our camera was very subjective. We were in a lot of close-ups. We wanted to be sort of inside the inner lives of our characters. And this season, the way I thought of it is our camera is going to be a bit more objective this season.
Hmm.
We're going to see them these kind of, our characters are going to be small in these big spaces, and allow for the kind of performance and physicality to play out. One of the great things about Rue is, or Zendaya, is that she comes from, the Disney Channel, so she's got such a great, physicality and comedic kind of training as her
Hmm.
backbone. And so, in designing this sequence, it was almost like, well, what if we can combine the kind of thrilling nature of, say, Jurassic Park with the car stuck in the tree, but mix it with sort of a Buster Keaton-esque, kind of comedy where
Right.
she's trying to get these drugs over the border.
I mean, Zendaya, in the years since Euphoria began, obviously the entire world has discovered this, along with the talents of many others of her castmates. They've all blown up in what must be a very heartening way. But when I think about Zendaya's performance on Euphoria throughout the series run, I think of physicality. I think there's this sequence is a great example. I think of her running through traffic in season 2. There's a sequence in the finale where she eludes a group of police officers by jumping onto a building's roof as though she herself were Spider-Man. Um, I guess I just wanted to give you a moment, since this was years and years of your lives working together, to just speak about her talent and what it was like to see the performance evolve over these 3 seasons.
I mean, look, it was beautiful. I remember, when we did the pilot episode, and she saw the first cut of the pilot, and she was in London at the time shooting Spider-Man. And she has that great monologue where she's talking to Fezco about anxiety and what drugs, you know, uh, provided for her the first time she tried Klonopin as a kid. And I remember she called me and she was in tears, and she said, I always knew I had this in me. I just
Mm,
never had proof. I never had proof that I could do this. And, I think it was a beautiful kind of thing to witness, is, someone who has an immense amount of talent, but is able to now, see it themselves, and the confidence that comes with it, I think is a thrilling thing to witness, just as a filmmaker and as a collaborator, that you start to see the muscle of being an actor get trained, to the point where things just start to come easier. One of the
mhm.
things that I've always loved about her as an actor, is I think about, um, is her physicality. And, I think about actors that I love in the past, where, you see De Niro walking down the street in Mean Streets, and he's got such an unusual walk. You can watch him walk anywhere. Same with Pacino. He's, just when you see him walk through the bank in Dog Day Afternoon, you go, this is a fascinating, performance. Just that alone. And so I always think if you can have a wide shot and the actor is interesting in the way in which they walk, then you've got something really special on your hands. And she has that in spades. I mean, she's just a really gifted performer, and has been a wonderful collaborator throughout these 3 seasons.
Yeah, beautifully put. As we always do on Half Hour With, before we let you go, we're going to ask if there's one thing about this particular season of Euphoria that if someone watching this conversation who hasn't had the chance to watch it yet, what would make them want to check it out?
Well, I sort of designed this season to stand on its own a bit. I wanted, look, I know how kind of precious people's time is. So I thought, oh, if we're coming back for season 3, I'd like to do something where it's, we're jumping ahead in time. And if you haven't seen seasons 1 and 2, you can still enjoy this season. It pretty much will catch you up with everything that you need to know from the previous 2 seasons. And if you happen to enjoy this season, then you can go back and watch the others if you're so inclined. But I wanted to make sure that, we were always growing our audience and expanding our reach just in terms of who was watching the show. And so I think, I think this season, we accomplished that, very well. Our numbers got bigger, our reach got bigger, but it's also, it's a very different show than the first 2 seasons. And I don't know, that's what sort of excited me about doing this, is that it allowed us to move into a different world and a different genre in some senses, but play with these characters that we've always loved and adored and been horrified by.
And probably those who haven't yet had the pleasure of getting to know these characters will come to love and adore them as well, I'm confident. Sam Levinson, thank you very much for your time, and thank you all for spending a half hour with Sam Levinson.
Thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate it.